All right. Hello and welcome to the Wikibrands Collective. Today we're talking scale on the Webcast. And my name is Doyle Buehler, and this is the Wikibrands Collective Webcast number 2, Scale and Growth. And I've got four amazing guests, four amazing people as part of this panel. Myself, Sean Moffitt, Jocelyn Butler, Rahul Raj, and I'll introduce them very, very shortly as well. Just a bit of background. What's Wikibrands? Well, it's disrupting the professional services game by becoming one of the first to build an on-demand business transformation company that brings the best independent strategists, techies, and changemakers, helping clients anticipate and build better futures for business. We're blending insights, predictions, and debates from seasoned pros who not only think about this stuff, but actually do it as well. And the Wikibrand Collective is this panel, and every episode is different, but we're focused on the 5 core topics of transformation, scale, reinvention, future-proof, and digitalize. And we'll be talking about the eyebrow-raising aspects of getting companies to their next chapters through transformation, innovation, and future-proofing. And today, as I mentioned, we're talking about scale and growth. And in this fast-moving digital world, if you're not growing, you're likely dying. And we're talking about the demand generators, the growth hackers, corporate venturists, and scale-up masters on how to effectively accelerate your business, revenues, audiences, and cultures. So let's meet our amazing guests. We've got 3 additional guests here all the way from Toronto, Canada. We have Sean Moffitt, who's the mastermind behind Wikibrands, managing director, based out of Toronto, is a global thought leader, author, and transformation change agent, helping businesses pivot, innovate, and future-proof themselves. I've got Jocelyn Butler, managing director. Thanks, Sean. Jocelyn Butler, managing director, orchestra and marketing. Jocelyn makes resounding human connections with consumers in the face of an ever-changing digital world across a wide range of SME clients. And we have Rahul Raj, founder and CMO of Five and Vine. Rahul helps challenger brands win. Formerly, he was the guiding force behind growth efforts at Ecobee and business model innovation at Walmart. My name is Doyle Buehler, based out of Australia, and I run a strategic consultancy on digital transformation for companies ready to scale, and author of Breakthrough, Unleash Your Remarkable Brand Value, Influence, and Authority. All right, cool. Well, thank you, everybody, for being here. Welcome.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thanks. Hi.
It's still early in Toronto, so.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So the topic is scale and growth. Who wants to start off with what does that mean? We hear it a lot, and is it a buzzword or is it something that's really important here? Who wants to start?
I'll start just because I feel like I got these guys on first, and I was on your first episode, so now I know how this whole thing runs. I think this is one of the most important topics about anything business-wise, particularly transformation. I think the skills required to be an effective scale and grower are fundamentally different than being a corporate person or being a startup person. There seems to be this middle wedge of people that if you're growing a business at more than 20%, there's a much different skill set, mindset, risk calculus involved in that than becoming part of a corporation where your probably mission is to grow 2% a year, or a startup where it's like, we don't know what we're growing, but we're still doing it. So I keep coming back to, wow, there is a set of companies, particularly here in Canada, where we need more of them to get to this stage of high growth. And I think the skills required are quite different than most of the other things we look at in business.
So is there an actual percentage then of growth that we're talking about?
I usually use 20% as a barometer, but it's going to vary by industry. It's very tough in retail to grow retail 20% because you're dealing in a live physical world. So a lot of my 20% comes from, looking at tech and software where it's easy to scale those things. So that's my barometer in terms of growth, 20%. But I'll abdicate to the other two on this call in terms of just what they think.
Yeah. Sorry, I tend to agree, just over 20%. But I also tend to evaluate what the percentage of profit is as well in those types of companies. Especially when you're in a startup, you are tending to planning to sometimes lose money in the first couple of years. But once you're starting to hit that scale space, you're really trying to maintain that profit margin that you've had for at least 1 year as you're trying to grow that 20% or more every year.
That's interesting.
And is it sustainable?
Not always. I think sometimes you've got to take a hit a couple of times to make sure that you can meet that goal over a couple of years. But in general, I think you should be at a point where you can feel like it's almost sustainable at the time as well.
Cool. And what do you think, Rahul?
It's interesting to hear those perspectives. I agree, and I'm rooted in a world where profitability isn't really part of the consideration set for growth. In fact, there's, whether you consider it businesses like Uber or Lyft that are wildly unprofitable because they are subsidizing the business so significantly in an aim to gain share. So most of the organizations that I engage with are smaller in nature, so more pre-Series A to just post-Series B. And those organizations are growing at more than triple digits. And they've they've started from the point of a proof of concept, and everything else is really like a land grab, trying to establish themselves in a leadership role within the marketplace and really sort of suggest to the world that they have arrived. The intention for most of their fundraising or for their venture capitalists is that they have a plan to achieve profitability at some point in time, but they aren't always required to do so right in the moment.
Interesting. So how do is there a way to mess up scaling? Like how can a company have a fantastic opportunity in front of them and they mess it up? And do you guys know of any companies that kind of might have hit that space?
So at least from my side, there's one way that you can really mess up scale, and it's based on that promise of profitability. So much of it is theoretical, and so you're really delaying the the assessment of the business model and true profitability. So you can mess up scale by gaining share and investing in share, but really it becomes, it's really built on a house of cards. So that's just at least one mechanism where you can do it. But I'll defer to Jocelyn and Sean, and I'll chime in later.
Yeah, cool, thanks. Jocelyn, what do you think?
Space where you can fail quite easily is the micromanagement within leadership. Oftentimes when someone's moving from a startup to a scale up, the leadership part of the organization, if they're not ready to let go and put some reliance on other leaders within the organization, they can try and hold on to too much control while trying to grow, and that can end up in a cyclical nightmare that ultimately can see a scale up fail.
Okay, and Sean, what about yourself? What can really mess that up?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of tactical considerations around scale where you can mess up, like you're just using the wrong mediums or whatever. But I find at scale, and sometimes maybe I should confine what I'm thinking of too. There's scale in terms of a company. There's also probably scale within a corporation. You're running a venture. You've been tasked or commissioned to do this separate thing, and it probably needs to operate a lot differently than the parent company. But I would say in either one of those situations, you're looking at a situation where you've probably had a startup or a department of 10 people. All of a sudden now you're introducing a whole bunch of people that you don't know. You've just hired these new people in. And so I find culture, strangely enough, to be one of the biggest things around this, where it's just make sure you're bringing in the right people, make sure you're onboarding in a right way where people feel valued right out of the gate, and a whole bunch of things that you didn't have to consider when it was you and 6 friends getting together to do a startup. Now all of a sudden you have to get some process and some rigor in place around. And I would say that one of the biggest things is culture.
Okay, yeah. It seems like culture always fits in a lot of things in terms of the growth of a company, not just inside of scale, but I don't know, how does that affect other things, Jocelyn?
Sorry, we're talking in terms of the culture of the company?
Yeah,
or
yeah.
I think
culture affects scaling.
I think there's a number of ways on how culture affects scale. If you don't have a core ethos that you're driving that culture to believe in, that can definitely affect how that's going to grow that scale. Because if you don't have a core belief that a number of brand new people, especially ones that you don't know, can kind of hold on to and tie into, they can definitely lose sight of where you're trying to take the business or take the growth to. I think in some cases, setting expectations is usually a very big piece within culture as well. If you are going to try and let people lead the culture without setting at least a groundwork or a framework for them to lead within, or again, it's all tying back into that brand ethos, you can really, really see a lot of mistakes happen. And that's where I find that businesses can tend to like head to the left, and that whole idea of growth gets lost in the shuffle of trying to create that culture itself.
Okay, well, that's cool. What do you think, Rahul?
On the culture front specifically?
Yeah.
I think we have a tendency to believe that what got us here will get us there. And oftentimes in a scale up, you really need to employ a different set of strategies. So, and that's kind of embedded within the culture of an organization or those individuals. So one sort of micro example of this is this belief that the oil well that you've been using to drive growth will never run dry, right? That it will just continue to output oil like it did the year before and the year before. And what we're seeing as an example in the marketplaces, organizations have an over-reliance on Facebook, and it has reached its point of diminishing returns because cost is increasing. So even though growth has existed for years prior to, now they've hit a bit of a shock in the system where now they need to start testing and qualifying the next frontiers of growth. And so the way that this connects to culture is almost ensuring that there's a culture of experimentation, even if things are going well, because you don't know when you're going to hit that point of diminishing returns and when your growth, like when the growth nozzle can really be turned off.
Yeah. Okay. The growth nozzle, the fire hose. So what should companies be doing to kind of help with this, when they're looking at kind of progressing, they're looking at scaling, they're looking at growth hacking, whatever you want to call it? Like, what are some of the things that they can do to kind of keep that momentum, build that momentum, that sort of thing? Jocelyn, you want to start?
Give me a second to think about that. Maybe defer to Sean first.
Sure. Yeah. Sean, go ahead.
I'm on your last line of defense here. I think maybe it's going back to what I was saying earlier. It's a different set of skills required here. I think whether it's bringing external skill set to bear on stuff or hiring people, making sure that you're not hiring the exact same person as you. And I'll give you a couple examples here in Toronto. Blockchain has just gone crazy in Toronto. We're crazy about two things, blockchain and cannabis. And so you're seeing a lot of different scale-up activity here. Never mix the two. Very, very bad. But you're looking at founders that averagely, at least on the blockchain game, are much younger than kind of an average CEO. And I would say for all their great intelligence and understanding of blockchain and savviness in terms of coding, and just some of them are just really great networkers. They don't have the skill sets. They just haven't been exposed to the skill sets of running a company before. And so you're running up against not only, we're talking about issues and we're going deep in them on this webcast today, but I don't know if some of these people even know some of the questions that they should be asking, never mind the answers. And so leaning on some external help to begin with, because you probably don't want to hire for it. And then finally, when you make those first few hires that don't look like yourself, making sure that you nail them in terms of, as Jocelyn mentioned earlier, your values, but also the different skill sets that you're going to need.
Okay, well, that's good. Thank you. So it's really, again, it comes back down to the people, right? That's pretty much what you're saying, Sean?
It's interesting because, my history is brand. I get put into this tech sector. And yet when we look at transformation or the call today, a lot of it does come back to culture, right? So, right. Where is HR people at this table, right? But it's true. Culture can eat strategy for breakfast 4 out of 5 days of the week. So.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
Yeah. And there's something great about the objectivity of someone coming in with a fresh set of eyes. The analog that I'd use is like if you live by like a train track, at some point that noise, which annoys you at the beginning, it just becomes part of your normal. And in a similar vein, it happens within organizations where they start to ignore some of the inefficiencies or the problems or the opportunities because it's just background noise. And inviting external people in, particularly people that you trust that have a pattern of innovation or have seen it across a variety of organizations allows for a fresh perspective. And so, kind of to Sean's point, regardless of one's seniority, they can still benefit tremendously from that fresh perspective.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. And Jocelyn, your turn now. What do you think is the biggest factor for building momentum or maintaining momentum here?
I think we've been kind of tied to the culture conversation. One of the things, obviously, that I'm embedded in very often is the marketing aspect. A lot of companies, when they're first startups, they're very reliant and can be quite successful on the whole concept of referral business. Uber is actually a very great example of that. But I think that there's kind of a line and a limit to where that can be successful, especially when you are trying to take a major piece of the market share, and you've got to start realizing that the 500 friends that brought another 20 friends in, that brought another 20 friends in, there's going to be a line to that. And if you don't actually prepare to have to actually bring in that external brand awareness piece while you're trying to scale up, you can end up dropping the ball, and you can really miss how many people you need to see your brand for you to actually see that type of growth, to be able to bring in the percentage that's actually going to consume and work and engage with your business itself. So I think that that's sometimes a really major piece of the puzzle that a lot of companies that are trying to hit that scale, that larger scale piece, can miss the boat on as well. And I think it's hugely integral into how you plan. Okay,
well, that's good. So let's we got time for one more question each, so we'll go into the lightning round here. We talked about a little bit of culture. We talked a little bit about, some of the pieces that you need from a people perspective. Are there technologies that we need to be looking at, or should we be using more technology to help with this, or just kind of leave it as is and focus more on the people and that sort of thing? What do you think? Start with you, Sean.
Me again first. I like hearing wise other people so I can piggyback. I feel like I'm always leading this train. So
I'm going from left to right on my screen. Just
that's all right. That's all right.
There is reason to it.
If that's your North American orientation or Australian orientation, I know toilets go the other way in Australia. Yeah. So well, I mean, we're living in a cloud world, right? So the only reason we can have startups and scale ups now is because we have, SaaS products. So I think there's a point in time in my own company where I used to think, God, I'm not one of those great companies yet because I'm not using that piece of software or this enterprise piece of software. And candidly, I look at it now and I'll mention one, MailChimp. Email creates massive action. And I was very discontent with how MailChimp operated maybe a year and a half ago. It felt very 2010. And I've been very impressed over the last year in terms of just implementations they've had, both in terms of my view of how I work within MailChimp as an email product, but also
how it works. I'd be happy to hear that.
Well, it's a free plug, MailChimp, but certainly there's no need for me to go out and get something more bulky, more cumbersome, and more expensive than that. And I did a session with a whole bunch of entrepreneurs the other day where I gave them 20 pieces of software, all of them under $40 a month. Even if you went for the deluxe package, most of them were under $40. And they were like, oh my Lord, we can be amazing for less than $2,000 a month. That's incredible. And it felt like the wool was being pulled over their eyes, and that, Salesforce hasn't got their meat hooks into them yet. So I would say cloud products, don't go for the most elegant, and start out as a minimal. You start out as a minimal viable product. Do it as a piece of technology that you're using as well. Go for that basic package. If you like it a lot, then start spending a little bit more. That would be my advice.
Yeah, because I think we get kind of caught up in that. Let's get the latest widget. Let's get the latest tech, but they seem to be fundamentally missing some issues. Who wants to go next? Rahul, your turn.
So I think there's the intersection between technology and the people piece. So with scaling, hiring is really complicated, but it's even more complicated if you're restricted to a particular geography. So I've seen more of my client base saying wherever the talent is, like you being in Australia, us being in Toronto, it doesn't matter. It's about finding the right people for the job. But what that means is that we need technologies like what we're using now, the ability to see people across geographies, meeting schedulers that deal with optimizing times across time zones, things like Slack that enable instant communication, but it really enables relationships and in a frictionless way in a world where not everyone needs to be seated in the same place at the same time.
That would make a great movie intro. In a world. Excellent. Jocelyn, your turn.
I think the way that I think technology really plays a really big part in a lot of businesses is project management tools. They've come such a long way. I think that so many, or I even have personal experience of finding a very big struggle on finding the right project management tool for your business. But I think they give a lot of opportunity for companies to, a good one gives a lot of companies a good opportunity to grow and scale by creating a digital space to actually control and organize what process and what needs to happen, and keeping people accountable. One of the ones that I find is doing a really great job and has been listening to their customers as Asana. Well, there are still some challenges with their platform and their usage. They kind of moved it over in the last year to have the whole card system function that Trello, Mondays had, that kind of thing. They originally didn't have, and they started seeing a huge loss of their customer base. But they brought that in, and I think the ability for people to be able to control how they want to see their the information that they need to be able to do has been a really great setup, and I think it's hugely helpful when it comes to trying to organize how you want to grow.
I can testify to Jocelyn's project management. She put me through her own rigor 2 days ago, and I still feel the bruises, but good use of software with a good taskmaster.
Perfect. Good stuff. All right, cool. So that pretty much wraps it up. Any final comments or things that you want to just tell us about the world of scale before we sign off?
I know we'll do more of these on scale because I find the topic so interesting. It has so many slivers. But one thing I just got to get out, I love people that call themselves growth hackers, but I hate the term growth hacking. Like, it's got to go. Like, we got to use something else because I feel like a criminal using it if I'm ever in a situation. So that's my only semantical big issue.
So you can be a growth hacker, just don't call it growth hacking.
Oh, it just even makes me cringe when you say it, Doyle.
All right. What about you?
That's just me.
Yeah. Jocelyn, what about you? Any final parting words?
I think coming back to just sort of what even tying into what Sean said about being an MVP is always running the minimum viable product and keeping everything simple so that you can start seeing the bigger picture is such a huge thing when you're trying to grow. Especially as leaders within organizations, one of the biggest things is to be able to step back so hard when it's your baby, to really, really let someone else in. And really at that point, if you do want to see that type of growth, you've got to be ready to step back and listen to what other people want to contribute to your business to make it a success, to make sure that you can see that type of scale. So
yeah. Oh, that's perfect. Cool. And to close things off, Rahul, what do you think?
I think
final words.
There's the right tool for the right type of scale. And so whether it comes to people or technologies, not all of them are appropriate for every stage of scaling. Some people specialize, at call it like 50 to 200 million, etc. Like there's ranges. And so seeking out the tools and the people that are relevant for your stage of growth to support you, I think is key, because even though we're referencing it as scaling, there are still different rungs on that ladder of scale.
Perfect. Excellent closing words. All right. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Really appreciate your time. To the panel, thank you so much. To our guests and audience, thank you for watching as well. This has been the Wikibrands Collective Scale and Growth Webcast series. Go to wiki-brands.com/webcast and get a preview of some of the other episodes that we've had and some of the upcoming ones as well. Thank you, Sean Moffitt, Jocelyn Butler, Rahul Raj, and myself, Doyle Buehler. And thank you, everybody, and we will see you online.
yes.
Thanks again.